Joe Budden says he's raising the prices on his Patreon. That's right, on a recent episode of Joe Budden's Patreon, Joe Budden said that he's done with the $5 tier. Now, we have to unpack this. What does this mean? Is there a deeper, darker criminal link? Let's get to the science. So, on his Patreon, Joe Budden basically said that he has intentions to make the Patreon cost a little bit more than it has. The $5 tier essentially is the cheapest tier. It's the one where you get the videos for the podcast the day of. I think occasionally you get like a little drop. You get a little something. You don't get much there. The $10 tier, you get a little bit more. The $25 tier, you get it all. I really think the value in Joe's Patreon, if you don't want to subscribe, is to like let 7 months go and then book $25 and then go back and watch the back catalog. That's what I used to do, but now I subscribe every month. But now Joe's saying that the $5 tier is too cheap and that he needs to raise the price in order to get more profits. Now, that is a big deal because there's a lot of people who have the $5 tier, and it means that if Joe does another episode in the future where he only wants to drop it on Patreon, you won't be able to access it with $5. You will likely need to pay $10. And then what does that mean for the other tiers? Will the $25 tier become the $40 tier? I don't know. What other tiers could Joe Budden be playing with? Is he going to create a creator tier, you know, where maybe creators who make content about the Joe Budden podcast have to pay $100 a month? I don't know. It's all stuff that we have to examine. For those of you who do have the Patreon, do you plan on paying more money? Remember when Joe Budden was talking about Candace Owens and her exorbitant prices for her Patreon? I mean, I think it was like $200, $500. Like, she was trying to get to the bag. Is Joe Budden gonna push the limits of his Patreon? And we haven't even gotten to the bottom of what this means for the show. You don't think everybody else on the show is gonna notice that the Patreon money has went up and their salaries ain't gonna go up? You don't think that when contracts come up, they're not going to try to negotiate them higher because of this Patreon deal? Something we have to examine. Also, we have to remember that the Patreon seems to be the lifeblood of the Joe Budden show. Yes, he uses the YouTube money, and I think he got that YouTube money from Rory Mal still saved up. Remember, he said he doesn't touch it. He says he lets it sit there. Was he hiding it behind expenses so he didn't have to realize actual gains? Come on, man, do the science. But let me know what you think. Joe's Patreon is humming. You go to his Patreon comment section, and it looks like the actual YouTube comment section. So if he starts to raise these prices, will that go away? Will people start to say, you know what, I'm not ready with that? Also, is the Patreon content good enough for Joe Budden to even consider this? I honestly think the Patreon content is in decline. I'm having a hard time watching every piece of content. They don't seem to want to talk about hot topics on the show. They want to talk about, you know, going out on the night on the town. And I'm like, I don't give a crap about this. I don't care about this. Talk to me about DJ Envy and Charlemagne, man. I'm trying to get to the tea, man. If you're going to charge me more, give me more. Also, Joe Budden has said that Patreon is doing this feature where you could pay per piece of videos. So maybe Joe drops a really big episode where he argues with Ish and he wants to charge $70 because it was this big Ish argument. I'm just saying, Joe's finding new ways to monetize his audience, and maybe one day it'll lead to the fact that there's nothing on YouTube and everything's on Patreon. It's just clips on YouTube. Anyway, that's my video for now about the subject. I can't play when Joe said it because Joe is locking down the Patreon content. He's acting like the harbinger of his resharing protocols. He's not letting it happen. So go get the Patreon, y'all. If y'all want to see it, just trust my word. This is what Joe said. Get your money up because that Patreon is about to go up in prices. All right, y'all. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.